All right, you are now tuned into the Rotated Views podcast. I am your host, Jimmylee Velez. I am here with Gabe, Goose, and the man of the hour himself, Ricardo Lorenzo. An unlikely story. In this episode, we have special guest and Emmy-nominated producer Ricardo Lorenzo. We cover topics that range from the mental illness, filmmaking, crowdfunding, creative processes, and much more. We wrap the episode up with a quote from John Lewis and a message from the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Guys, if you're new, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to download and subscribe. We drop a new episode every Tuesday morning for your listening pleasure. Kicking things off, Ricky, right?
Yep, you can call me Ricky.
I like it. So, thank you first of all for, joining us here at Miguel's.
It's more like thank you for having me. Yes.
For those of us who do not know, let us know, who you are and what you do.
Okay, who am I? This is the question I ask myself every time I wake up. Who are you?
Right.
I'm just a kid from New Jersey that is now 30 years old and getting older and doesn't know what he's doing with his life, so he just does all sorts of creative ventures just to get some craziness out of his head.
Yes.
I'm from New Jersey. I have been really into filmmaking since I was a kid. Not really the stuff that I'm looking to make now, but my dad watched a lot of sci-fi and a lot of action films.
Okay.
These are things that were very, very bizarre growing up.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're just like watching like these people, like it's just bad acting, cheesy stunts and stuff like that. Like I used to love just like pausing the movie.
Right.
You're watching like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie and he's falling down a hill, but it's not Arnold Schwarzenegger.
And
then you're just like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
And that's when I learned like none of this is real. This is cool. How do they make this stuff?
Yeah.
And that's how I got into it. And then I got it more as I got older. I got into more experimental artsy stuff. I was the kid in high school who was known for getting a bunch of people together and be like, I'm having this premiere at my house. I found this movie. And my friends will be like, oh, that was crazy. And then I'll go, I'll find something more than that. Oh, that's crazy. And I remember it started with something as little like David Lynch's Eraserhead and got into this weird movie from the 60s called Salo or 120 Days of Sodom. And it takes place in during the Nazi era in Italy, so it's and so you got all these these weird rich people, and they kidnap 6 girls and 6 guys. They're kids, they're all teenagers, and they just put them through the worst torture for 120 days.
Wow.
And you're watching this movie and you're like, okay, I don't want to find anything worse than that. And I remember I showed all my friends this, and everybody was like, I'm never coming back for a movie at your house.
That was a topper.
Yeah. That's what I did as a kid. What I do now is I'm a video editor. I started off producing. I do a little directing on the side, but career-wise, I picked up editing, and that's what I do right now. I'm a producer editor at a local station, and it's chill. It's a little boring, but it's a chill job. It pays the bills. I got the benefits, but it's not what I want to end up.
Right. So, an unlikely story, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're here for. Before we get into that actual, project, can you just explain a little bit of the build up to how this all came about? And then you could explain what, the unlikely story is. Yeah,
well, I mean, had to be so this movie, I started working on it in 2019? I started thinking about it in 2017.
Okay.
And I was just contemplating concepts because I haven't put out a movie since 2013, 2014, which was this movie called I did Transparent for grad school.
Okay.
And it did film festival circuits and stuff like that. It was really cool. I mean, I was making a movie about being relating female puberty or just relating puberty in general to transitioning from female to male.
Yeah.
And I take these two topics and I put them together, and that's the first story. So it was 2013, and nobody was really messing with that theme yet. I'm not saying that I found something new,
sure,
but I'm just saying it was something interesting to learn about, and now it's really interesting to see it all in the mainstream.
Right.
But sorry for sidetracking there.
Yeah.
So that was the first one I did, and I mean that was the third film I did, and I hadn't done anything since then. So I'm kind of like trying to figure out like what to do, you know, like what am I gonna do? And it took a while to play music and stuff like that.
Nice.
And so like just every day thinking of ideas, and then finally one day in 2017 at some point, it came up in my head. I'm like, it'd be really awesome if I made a movie like When Harry Met Sally. Yeah. And I was like thinking in my head, that's the stupidest idea ever. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you know what? Like, there's a really interesting concept to When Harry Met Sally, and it's the idea of like, this is still a topic that we go through today, where it's like, can you really be in a friendship with like, if you're a man, can you like, and you're like a straight man or a gay man, if you, like the person that can you be friends like with the type of person you're attracted to, or like in this case with Harry Met Sally, it's like, can you fall in love? Can you just be friends with a woman without falling in love with her?
Right.
And, obviously the movie ends with like, yeah, no, you can't. You're going to fall in love with them. And I'm like, that's not what I want to do. I want to do one that's like today, that'll fit. Yeah. And so then I'm like, I need a better, like, I drew a line, like I drew like an outline, right?
Okay, like on a sketch pad? Or
No. I'm just
in your
like,
mind.
Like, yeah. Oh, okay, This is analyzing like an analogy. It was like just basically an outline shaping into something, and then eventually things just got crazier and crazier, and then it turned into like, what happens if like this guy's a cannibal and he wants to eat somebody, and this girl wants to kill herself? Yeah. And then I kind of like talk to my friends, and I'm telling them these ideas, and we kind of just like throw ideas back and forth. That's a lot of how my writing process works. Is I'll talk to my friends, and we'll throw things back and forth.
Now, not just any friends who are also creative, or just random,
mostly
randomness? Creative
friends. Okay. Yeah. But I mean, like, the thing is, like, I don't think I have any friends that aren't creative. Right. Like, it's weird. I wouldn't necessarily say that like this is on purpose. Yeah. But it's kind of like the people that I talk to and the people that I spend most of my days with are creative people, so I'm able to throw ideas back and forth, and they give me stuff. But my closest best friends are the ones that really give me the best ideas. So I like, we'll have a conversation, throw back and forth. Yeah. And then it just turned into something crazy. And then I found a friend of mine who I hadn't heard from him for like 4 years. Who was the co-writer of this movie. Oh, okay. He just like disappeared. He just does that sometimes, you know, and you kind of just got to be like, let him go. Where's Alex, man? Yeah. It's like, he's probably home playing video games. Yeah. And like he does his thing, he keeps himself busy, but you don't hear from him for a long time. And then I shot out this idea with him, and I'm like, yo, I want to write this movie with you. He's like, we've been doing this so much as kids, and like, I want to give you something, I promise. We've had so many failed attempts, and here's what we can make it happen. I made 3 of them, and I know I haven't done it in a while, but I'm pretty confident I can make another one. Yeah. And he's like, all right, let's do it. So we started in 2018. We started storyboarding and all this stuff, and that's how the story came about. Okay. And that took almost a year. Wow. And now we're here and still trying to get it done.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So what's the actual goal? Maybe the goal of the movie or the film, and what's the whole plot?
I don't think I have like, I always try to think about like, should there be like a really, I mean, obviously there's going to be a message from my standpoint, like from what I see, like I create this piece of art. Yeah. But do I really need to tell people what I'm creating? Do I really need to go out there and be like, this is, just preach for the movie? The idea is just to, create an artwork and just put it out there for people to
interpret themselves. I like it. So the reason why I was like the goal of producing the film was more because you said you had a couple failed attempts. So in your mind, what was a failed attempt, and what would make this a successful attempt?
Oh, the failed attempts in the past would be like, when we were in high school and college, and we would write scripts, just write, and we wouldn't do anything with it. Yeah. And it was something that was like, I'd tell my friends, like, if you want to make a movie, we have to make something that is in budget. You can't just make this crazy blockbuster film and then just expect us to make it happen with $100. Right. It's like, you can do so many creative things in 1 room, 2 rooms, so just do that. And every time it starts off that way, and then it just blows up out of proportion, and we're just like, nope. And I'm like, we can't do this, and they're like, why? We can make it happen. I'm like, no, like, I'm already like, this movie takes place in 3 locations. I have 2 characters, and I can't even, I struggle making money for it. Yeah. And so it's like, what makes you think we're going to be able to make this movie that you've written? But So it's good that now I actually, you know, now that they're with me and on board, and now, you know, he's wanting to get it done now the right way and not go crazy with the production or budget and stuff like that.
So how does it work when you have a disagreement with Alex, right? So, for example, if you envision whoever, you know, the cannibal character or the female character, you have something in your mind, or is that something you guys already both have agreed on with this storyboard? You know, like maybe you have even something as simple as, you know, a blonde hair, blue eyed chick, and he has, no, that's not what I thought. I wanted, like, you know, like some dark haired Spanish girl in my mind. I thought that's what it would be. Like, do you guys ever have that? Like, oh crap.
I think if he knows me better enough, like coincidentally, like I kind of like, I write the script and he writes the script, and I think we kind of have this like unwritten rule, kind of like, you know, he's not, unless he's has a person in mind, you know, like he's not going to be like, no, I didn't want that, you know, he's going to be like, he's either going to be like, I respect your decision, or you know what, I saw the same thing, like that's awesome. I envisioned this person to look that way, and coincidentally it worked that way this movie, at least. That he was like, oh, you know, it's cool that like I this is exactly how I envisioned these characters to look, and I'm like, perfect. Because
that's cool. That's cool. What so how can you explain to us the process of not the filmmaking, but once you have the product, and we can get into the process of filmmaking, but I'm always fascinated, how do you get the word out? Obviously, you know, you're doing a media run now, but when you enter into, like, is it just like the film festivals, you just submit your project? How does that all work? Because this is very distant from us. I mean, I don't do any of this, and I find it fascinating as hell to how people get their message out there, their art, their projects. It's always fascinating because everyone has different approaches. Yeah,
it's crazy. So like that's the other thing is, you know, I have a really like neat network of friends who are like either like, you know, like me, that are just like in, you know, start like trying to get back into it. And then I have friends that have been doing it for a while and they're still kind of like mid-key, and then I've got friends that are actually doing stuff. Like in like LA and stuff like that. So it's interesting to like, you know, hear all the different ways that they do it, you know, and it seems like it's always harder when you're at the bottom, because it's like you're in charge of publishing yourself and promoting yourself and putting your own stuff out there. And so it's like, I think my method of madness is like, you know, like I'm terrible at selling myself. Awful at selling myself. And like I've the least amount of confidence to sell myself. So it's like, who the hell's gonna want to talk to me? Who the hell's gonna give me money? And I think right now it's mostly like, you know, promoting yourself to your friends and your family, and like kind of like depending on them to kind of help you build your brand in a way, or build your project. And so it's like they're the ones that, you know, that's why it's good to not burn any bridges, because you never know like when you need a friend. And you know, it goes to say for anything, you know, whether it's emotionally or, you know, creatively. And so it's like really interesting that, you know, you keep these positive things, and you just, you know, you constantly just talk to your friends about what you do, and just be positive, you know, and be like act like you love it, even though most of the days you want to like burn your apartment to the ground because nothing is working. But I think it's just like depending on your friends and your family right now, because they're the ones that are going to be like, oh, you know, I know this person, and then you never know who that person's going to know. So it's like it's cool to do that, and I think that's the way that you want to do it if you're starting off. That's the way I'm doing it, at least. And I mean, maybe it'll fail, maybe I won't, I don't know. I just kind of go with it.
That in itself's like the adventure too.
Because you can't really plan it, you know. I'm not like a big, even just like a big independent filmmaker, you know. I don't have a name. I just have my friends who are like, oh, here's Ricky, he's making another movie. I was like, let's help him out.
That's cool. So you have a Indiegogo campaign for this film. Explain what the funding will be for and how people can help.
Oh, so the Indiegogo has, I think, perished as of when was that? Last month. So I've been like collecting contributions on our PayPal.
Oh, okay.
You know, just collect, I send that out to people and friends, and that's basically what we do. And most of the money is going to go towards like production. So it's, paying a lot. It's like there's some people that are doing stuff for free for me who work for me normally, but then there are people that don't. So I got to pay them. I got to make sure to get paid. And like, for people that aren't getting paid, I got to be able to feed them for like 8 days, like 3 meals for 8 days. And so the money goes to that, towards equipment. And it's I'm not nothing goes to me, everything. It's not like I'm getting paid for this. So all the money is going to like, that. And I don't even think I'm hoping to have something to enter into film festivals once it's done. But that's where all the money's going to.
It's perfect. So you just alluded to it, entering into film festivals. How does that process work?
It sucks.
Yeah.
It really sucks.
So, and I'm assuming, competition's high. You're going up against
it's like, imagine let's say you're at home. Okay, you have your brand, right?
Yeah.
Now, let's say there's a really, really creative genius, and he would love to work for you, and you're getting all this fan mail.
Yeah.
You're getting like thousands and thousands of like just mail, not even emails, like snail mail.
Physical mail, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like in this pile is one creative genius.
Yeah.
You get so annoyed that you're getting so much mail that you just go pass it off to the intern. And then what's going to happen is the intern's going to go, beginning sucks. The beginning sucks. And then you just all of a sudden get skipped over.
Yeah.
So like film festivals work in that way where it's like you pay lots of money to just get skipped over.
Wow.
And so it's like a lot of the times that people really get their films in is, they're really good, but most of the time it's politics. They know somebody knows somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody's really good friends with the programmer. It's like, if you want to get into a film festival, you got to be friends with programmers.
Yeah.
They're the ones that know people, and they're the ones that are, dictate what plays and what doesn't. So, submit, waste money, and then talk to people and be friends, go visit festivals. That's my plan, at least for submitting the film at the festival. So hoping to rekindle some old relationships with people.
And it's kind of hard because it's like even if someone is honestly trying to seek out a Ricardo Lorenzo, it is hard because they probably get so much junk. Right, kind of as you mentioned, that when you come across, their table with something really good, they're just kind of like, oh gosh, here we go again. But if they gave it the time, you're like, oh my gosh, that could be literally life changing. And we just had a couple people in the music industry in here, and it's almost like the same thing. They put their souls into their art, and it's like, and for someone just to kind of pass.
Yeah, the music industry and the film industry are pretty similar.
Yeah.
Like a lot of like music, like nowadays musicians are struggling to get paid. More than, Metallica is like the richest band in the world, but there's no band that'll ever be as big as Metallica.
Right.
And then people in the music industry still struggle with that, just like filmmakers. Nobody's ever gonna make as much money as like George Lucas. Nobody's gonna own like Skywalker Ranch.
Right.
Nobody our age, nobody from our generation. It's insane.
Yeah.
So it's like that. It's like it's so hard. You're not even to be that rich. It's just hard to like be noticed.
Right. So an unlikely story. From my understanding and for what I gathered, it's a dark comedy, right?
Yeah.
So why dark comedy?
Dark comedy is probably the best kind of film that I love. I just have this really weird, sick sense of humor where it's like things that are dark appeal to me.
Yeah.
So I like touching subjects that are like dark, but also like I don't want to be like violent in a way. Like my dark humor isn't violent, isn't bloody. It isn't like there's nothing gratuitous about it.
Got it.
It's just like situations, like
it's more like thought provoking.
Yeah, and like more like situational, where like you're at a like think for instance like you're at a hardware store picking up tools with a person next to you, and the person next to you is gonna murder you, and you're all picking up tools as to what tool is gonna be used to murder you.
Right.
So it's like stuff like that. Like I really dig things like that.
So why do you think with this whole dark comedy, it's a thought-provoking, images, scenery, topics, concepts. Why do you think, the discussion of mental illness is a tough topic for people to talk about, let alone make films about it?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a deep cut because everything that's happening around us is due to the fact that people's lack of awareness of mental issues in this country or in this world actually. So it's like, we were just talking about it earlier about like people who are sociopaths and like to scam people,
right?
Or like scam artists who are sociopaths, and like
we're calling them scam artists, but really
they might be sociopaths. Like there's a reason why they're doing these things,
right.
And like we tend to like kind of like push the mental illness away, like the being aware of their mental illness instead of just like you want to throw them away instead of realizing like there's something wrong with this person.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily that they're not guilty and shouldn't be. Like you shouldn't be punished for that. You should be, like get treated for whatever it is.
Right.
Same people. You think like there are people that steal to survive, and there are people that are addicted to stealing. Why do they like stealing?
Right.
It's like this. So like and like there's
That's
things.
A great way to put it.
There's deeper things than that. I mean, like there's the obvious like with like depression and like so like it's a topic that's kind of like not talked about enough and. I've seen a lot of things in my life. I've had situations happen with family members and stuff like that, and people kind of just like rub it off as like, this person's just like disgusting, or this person's a terrible person, like that. And you're just like, no, there's something deeper in that person,
Right.
Like you're surrounded by millions and millions of people every day.
Right.
Not everybody thinks that way, and there's a reason why a person acts a certain way.
Yeah.
And so it's like I would love to go in the street and like just film a bunch of just like people living on the street and get to know them. But the problem is I have this fear that it might seem like I'm exploiting them, and I don't want to exploit, but like you also got to be careful when you approach these subjects because a lot of people suffer different things or go through different things, and you got to be careful how you approach these subjects. And I think that's another thing you're seeing now is a lot of people that were very sensitive and didn't talk about these subjects. They're actually talking about it while people are trying to push them away. And so it's important to kind of keep pushing and getting the topic out there.
Yeah, I think it's a great point to make too. It's the person who's producing the coming up with the product. It's almost like what's the intention? Yeah, because it's tough. Because as soon as you said that, it reminded me of I don't know, something I saw on Instagram. Where it was this guy who had a huge following, and he recorded himself like giving homeless people food, right? And it almost backfired. And I don't know. I don't think that was his actual intention. I'm not him, so I don't know what his real intention was. But people were saying, why did you have to record that? You could have just did it. And I think he was trying to say, like, we need to share or spread, spread the love. I think he was trying to go one direction, and people took it a whole other direction. So it is wildly sensitive. Yeah, it's interesting. It is a very sensitive thing to do, and I think that's where we struggle from. Like, we're working, we have a brand, and not necessarily that this guy is trying to promote his brand. This guy is using his brand to promote feeding the homeless, right? So it's like people get those two confused, like, right. And there's a distrust, you immediately think the worst of people, and I mean, like it's like, it depends, it's not Paul, like, what's his name, Logan Paul, like going into a woods where like people that are like in Japan where people kill themselves, or right. And like he's just like filming in there, right? Like that's a little weird, and like that with that thing, that thing was kind of messed up, but that's something that's like not using. You're using your brand to promote this. No, you're pushing your brand on this thing. Yes, like oh my god, look at me being weird. There's a body over there. Oh, right. Versus a guy who's actually on the street recording himself, feeding the homeless and trying to say this is what we should be doing. Yeah, and so it's like. There's a matter of trust. There's a matter of approaching a subject. And I think, sometimes you're going to deal with people who are going to tell you you don't know what you're doing, but, you got to do your best. And just, sometimes you just can't listen to everybody who's screaming at you. So, explain how comic books influence your ideas and concepts.
Oh man, I love comics. I have a comic. Yeah, my comic collection is just as big as a record record file, like an audio files record collection. Yeah, you know, I mean, this is just, it's not necessarily like superhero comics, so it's not like really Marvel, DC kind of thing. It's more like situation, like dark humor again. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of like different authors, like Dash Shaw, there's like Jeff Lemire, and you know, there's a lot of them out there. And, and they do really the Gabrielle Bell, she's like from New York, so there's like really cool stuff out there, and they mostly deal with topics that are like, you know, about mental illness or like just mental health or like, you know, trauma and like history and past. And like the thing that's really cool about these things is like you don't see a lot of movies doing similar things where they're like tackling these interesting realistic subjects, but in the most like surreal ways, you know. Like there's a lot of things you can get away with comics that you can't do in movies, and you know, and then also on top of that, it's like it's the art, you know. You when you watch a movie, you know, it's really cool, you know, like as a director, it's really cool if, you know, like if I actually did design my own, you know, sets, just like a comic book artist draws their own cartoons sometimes. Yeah. And so it's like, it's just really cool to see the writing and the style of the style of art that they put out, and just the stories, and seeing it all come together. It's like, wow, I would love to do something like that.
So will An Unlikely Story be a comic as well?
Actually, funny story. Unlikely Story went from let's say it's gonna do a feature film. Yeah. And then I was like, you know what? Let's do a comic. Maybe that'll be cheaper. And then I realized how hard it is to actually make a comic. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make a movie. Wow. Yeah, it is not easy because like I don't draw, so I have to find somebody who's gonna draw, and then like you have to write a script for a comic book. And then it's a lot of work because it's a lot of like art and a lot of other person's time to draw everything for you. Yeah. And then just thinking about the fact that they have to make changes of the drawing, you're just like, damn. Yeah. It's like storyboarding, but that's the end game. And I'm like, nope, I don't even storyboard, man.
Or even trying to portray your thoughts for that artist style, even. That's
even exactly. Yeah. And like hoping that this artist works with your words, you know, or your story. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So what's your favorite part about filmmaking?
That's a good question. Definitely. The interesting thing is I'm always like when I'm making a movie, whether I'm producing it or, you know, producing, directing, or writing it, it's always fun, the process of like production, like pre-production and then production and then post. It's so like there's always something fun about it, but then at the back of your mind you're always like, I want this to be done, I want this to be done, I want this to be done. And so like I think I like the entire process of it, because when I do it, I'm like, oh god. When I don't do it, I'm like, I need something to do. I'm gonna die here. I need something creative, and like most of my creative ventures have to be long, you know. And you know, one of the things that I love that Harmony Korine, he's a filmmaker. He's done like Gummo and stuff like that. One of the things that, and a movie called Mr. Lonely that I really like. One of the things that like, he talks about is like how he doesn't understand how screenwriters or filmmakers can release movie like a year after year after year after year. Yeah. And I always wondered that, because I'd like to take my sweet time on a movie because I want to make sure it's there. Yeah. And so that's the process. I love that process. I love just like, you know, you sit down for like 20 hours and you're busting out a script. Yeah. And then you put the script away for like 2 or 3 months. Yeah. Do something else. Yeah. And you come back to it, you write it, you either let it go and you write it again and then put that one away for a while and then come back and then look and compare the two and figure out what you like about both. Yeah. It's just like, or even just like before you even get to the script, just like writing everything down in notes, you know? And that process into pre-production, into production, and into post is like, I like it all. There's nothing specific. It's just a long thing to keep myself sane. Okay. Yeah.
That's awesome. So do you hang out with or associate with or maybe go to like seminars or webinars, whatever, with other filmmakers to generate ideas, or is it just kind of something you just, you know, keep to yourself?
I mean, like there's seminars and like stuff like that. I'm not too keen on them. Yeah. there's a great movie that makes the kind of like spoofs that.
Okay.
It's called Adaptation. It's by I think Charlie Kaufman, it was Charlie Kaufman. He's the guy who did Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. He wrote that. And just like, there's this funny thing about it where it's kind of like the person that is like telling you these things is also kind of like, struggling just like you. And they're trying to tell you how things are and what you should do. Right. I think like, I have no problem with like going and taking that advice and like going and doing your own thing with it. But I think my thing is I don't trust those people. I think those people are trying to make money off of me. Yeah. I think if they really wanted to really teach people, they'd be doing that for free. You know? But they turn it into a job. And I don't know. I don't trust them. Yeah. But the people that go, like more power to them. If you want to pay for it, you have the money to pay for a seminar. I'm not that. That's dope. Yeah. But like I don't trust those people. Yeah. Not at all.
There is something that comes off and a little cheesy too. It's just like. Ugh. Like, okay, Mr. Know-It-All, you're going to really teach me. You know what I mean? And I feel like there's some falsehood there, right? I mean, you're preaching about being creative, but meanwhile, you're giving people a step-by-step guide on
how to do this something. But then if you had the exact know-how, you'd be doing it, not teaching somebody to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's just like the thing with, like, we talk about all the time, like pyramid schemes. It's like, I got a way for you to make money. And we had a guest on who put it the best, Jolan Davis. He's a realtor. And he says, well, if you had a way, why would you go out of your way to teach me to also do what you're doing? Wouldn't that be taking away from the piece of your pie as well? It didn't even make sense. Yeah. And he's like, the guy didn't say anything. He's like, yeah, that's true, I guess.
Well, I mean, not really, because what these people ultimately end up doing for you is they end up working for you. Right. And so it's like, that's how a pyramid scheme works, where it's like you're the person at the top, and then you have two people working for you. Yeah. And then those two people get to sit on their ass because they have three people working for them. Yeah. And then those people get to hire, and it just keeps going from there. Yeah, and then eventually you have a corporation.
Right. That's just craziness. What is this something that you share with, any family members? Like, you said for marketing purposes, and hopefully you have like a good support system. Is this are the people around you supporting of everything that you do? Is it kind of like a struggle, or like, oh, they don't understand, they don't get it, this is kind of my thing? Because I don't know if artists are in your family, but some of the stuff that we do is like my family cannot even relate to, and they're just like, oh yeah, and they're just wildly supportive just because that's the type of people that they are. They don't know what we do or get it, but they're like, but we'll support it, whatever. If that's what you want to rock out, we're doing it with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's an interesting thing about like friends and family where it's not necessarily, they don't have to understand what you're doing. Yeah. There's just like this idea that you like to be the person that helped someone get to where they wanted to be.
That's cool. Yeah.
And I that's why I'm always like, I need money for this movie, and then I step back and I'm like, oh God, no one's giving me money. And then someone gives me money, I'm like, I feel so bad. I'm so sorry. Please take this money back. And then, but then you gotta like sit back and you gotta really think about things. Like, people are giving you money for a reason. It's not like you're not, even sometimes like you're not really. I don't know. Is it a burden? I mean, if I hate going on Facebook and Instagram because, a lot of times you'll see people doing what I'm doing, and I'm like, ugh. Yeah. And I mean, I don't complain, but in my head, I'm complaining. I'm like, oh God. Yeah. And it's not really about like them. It's just like, this idea of like, this is what we have to do now. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, whatever, right. Cool. Well, and so like, I struggle to do what I do because I don't like to be like a burden on people. Right. And so, but it's great that like, I'm getting positive attention. People are like giving me money and they're like, oh, good luck on everything. Yeah. I've had people that I haven't talked to in years say like, oh, I've always respected your view of art and like your creative mind. And I'm like, what? Right. I haven't talked to you in 4 years. You never said anything about anything creative I've done. That's amazing. And they're giving me money and telling me that. And I'm like, wow, like this is awesome. Yeah. So like, it's really cool the support that you get. And it's like it makes you, it makes you want to give back, which is cool because, your friends help you. And then, you have this like negative idea in your head and you're like, what's the point of doing this? No one cares. And people care. People help you, and then you're like, you know what? I should do the same. And
Yeah.
you know, got to be a little more positive.
Yeah, definitely.
That makes you want to put the best product you want out there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So do you outside of just to switch gears for your creative process, what does that look like? Do you just generate ideas? I know we have people who generate ideas off a specific thing, watching other movies, or walking through a specific city and they're grabbing ideas. And I believe it was Josue Laura who we had on. He says he just finds. He almost makes stories up in his mind by watching somebody do something. The way this guy opened up the door for his wife, he's like, wow, I haven't seen that in a while. I wonder how their relationship got to that. And then he just, off of that, he just spins off of like this wild like thoughts. Is that something similar you do, or is it just you read comics or you watch movies, or you just get it from every day?
People watching. I love people watching.
I love people watching too. It's
but
awesome.
I mean, I get a lot of inspiration on characters through people watching. Like, but more like not necessarily like looking at a person and telling myself, oh, that person opened the door. I'll look at that and be like, what if that he's just got into a fight with his girlfriend and like this is his way of fixing it, but he's just gonna do something else again. Right. It's like I'll do stuff like that. Yeah. But it all comes in different times. Most of the time it's when I'm driving in the shower. Or like just sometimes I get ideas from movies that I'm watching. Right. I had this same this happens to me, but then I'll have like I said, I'll have an idea and I'll write it down. I'll send it to a friend, and then a friend will send me back, this is great. What if this and this and this, and then that's also where it builds up from. Got it. Like it starts off with something small, and then it blows up into something big, and then there's a lot, and then we condense it to something. So it's like it comes and goes all different places. Yeah. It's not just one single thing. Yeah. Now, how does any other industry influence you? In the fact that, like like motocross, skateboarding, music, whatever. Is there like another industry that that influences your art? Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's like old school skate videos that I used to watch. Music for sure. Yeah. Actually, a lot of every time I do writing, I listen to one song over and over and over and over. Really? Yeah. So I'm like listening to a song for hours until I'm done. Because the thing is, what happens is if I'm listening to a song, like let's say, I'll set up like a playlist of like 10 songs or 5 songs. I'll be driving and I'll be like, oh man, I really like this. This is making me think of something. Yeah. That's a lot of where inspiration comes from, is listening to music. Yeah. So like I'll be like sitting in the car and I'll be like, okay, yeah, I like this song. So I'll put on a playlist, and I'll put on another playlist. I'll put on and I'll pull on another song. Yeah. So then by the end, I'm like on to like 10 songs or so. And then so I'll sit at my desk and I'll write. And I'll write and write and write. And then the moment that I get out of writing, I'm like, I know why I got out of writing. The song ended. Mm-hmm. So of those 10 songs, like it might be like the 5th song. So I'll go back to the 5th song, listen to it, and writing. I'm still going. The song ends. Ideas leave, and I'm like, okay. So I'll take that song and I'll loop it, and I'll keep looping it. Wow. And that's how I write to music. See, you know what's crazy for me? I'm wild. Like my one brother, when he would study or whatever he was doing, he would have to have this background noise, music, the TV on something. Me, I'm complete opposite. I'm like, dude, I get distracted. I'm like, I can't listen to anything in the background. That's awesome, though. Well, I mean, I can't listen to like anything like noisy, unless it's like noise that's just noise. Like if it's like just like an instrumental. Yeah, but it's mostly like ambient stuff or like something from like a movie score. Yeah. I can't. I mean, if I can't listen to I can listen to like really noisy rock bands, because or metal bands, like noise bands, because like their thing is just noise, and it's just like white silence. There's a lot going on there, or white noise to me. Noise, yeah. That's awesome. So transitioning to this, an unlikely story. Is this something? Is this when you put together a film? Do you kind of stick with kind of the same thing? You want to do more dark comedy stuff? Or is this something, you want to, after this is done, and I just kind of jumping the gun already, but making more, films and putting messages out there for, mental illness awareness? Is that something else you want to tap into? Or is it kind of like, this is, sufficient for you? I'm not going to keep tackling mental issues. I'm going to tackle all sorts of things, but obviously when you have, people and stories, you're going to have those things regardless. It's not necessarily that I'm going to go out and say this is a mental illness film, but I will, these things will be in the movie because they're just a part of people, that's a part of who we are.
Yeah.
And so it's like right now, I think if my friend and I, like Alex and I, are still working on another movie that tackles the subject in like military jail.
Okay.
And it has to do with like experiences that his brother went through, and like you're learning about the different ways that people think. And we have a really, really, really deep topic that we're tackling because like supposedly this military jail he went to only carried people who had drug offenses on base or were child molesters.
Whoa.
And so it's like when in this movie you're like we're like focusing on how to figure out what kind of things we can do in this sense, like because you're tackling like a pedophile here, and it's like you don't want this person to be a lovable character, but you want this character to be something,
right.
You don't want to make like a one-dimensional character. So like and I mean you're dealing with some like like you're also dealing with mental issues when that comes in, like trauma and like people's history and what happened to them, and like abuse and all that. So it's like, that's a tough one.
Something that I always found like cool when I was a kid, was just like, man, that was awesome. And I always wanted to see more of it, and it never happened. And I'll transition it to filmmaking into, I don't know, maybe you've done this, or maybe people have done this and I just never even realized, but it was like when other characters from previous projects you did enter into a new project, and you're like, wait, and you get to make these cool connections. So what happened was, I forget what it was. I was watching Full House, and all of a sudden Steve Urkel showed up in their show. And you're like, what? That was crazy. Yeah. And it's this fantasy life that all these shows are living, but for some reason it was real in your head. Or Zach Morris would walk into the house and you're like, wait a second, they're the same age? It's just like trippy.
Quentin Tarantino tried to do something like that. Okay. He does it a lot with products, like the diner and the cigarettes. I think it's like Red Apple cigarettes or something like that. And so every single Quentin Tarantino movie you'll see Red Apple cigarettes.
Oh, okay.
He's tried to do things like that. Like he does, for instance, like the Vega brothers. So there's Reservoir Dogs and there's Pulp Fiction. Okay. Vincent Vega is John Travolta's character, and then something Vega from Reservoir Dogs is played by Michael Madsen, and they're brothers. And so there's two characters. There's a link there, and there was actually supposed to be a movie where the two actually connect.
Got it.
Like, so some movies try to do it.
Yeah.
I would love to see stuff like that, but I think you're going to see that more in comic book films.
Okay.
Than you will see it in like actual dramas. I think what happens is if you like make an independent film and you have all these characters come together, it's going to throw people off. You're like, oh, I love that character. It's not like Full House where the story doesn't matter. You just want to see what Michelle says.
How she reacts to Urkel.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, in movies, you'll be like, wait, the story was happening, but this person just came in. What the hell? He was just in the other movie.
But like Kevin Smith does stuff like that.
Yeah, he does. Kevin Smith, Kevin Smith does do stuff like that. But like the thing about that, it's like the movies are centered around his characters.
Sure. Absolutely.
So it's like when you're watching a Jay and Silent Bob movie, you're watching a movie for Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What's your biggest pet peeve with the filmmaking industry?
The money. Yeah. Everybody's money obsessed. I always think that the more expensive the movie is, it loses like integrity, right? Because they're so focused on like budget and having to spend all this money. I mean, it's not easy spending like $1 billion. When you have like a big budget movie, you focus so much on having to spend that money because you have to spend it all.
And I always heard that I think the budget for the marketing budget is almost as much as the actual production budget.
Yeah, because they pay so much to just promote the film. They promote everything. That's why it's so freaking expensive. And like, I think that bothers me. I think the other pet peeve is like remakes. Like,
I'm trying to go back to
old, so distasteful.
It's weird because there are some times when it's like, a person who's a fan and is directing the movie and trying to make their own version of that movie, but it's like, who cares? Just make your own movie. And I don't want to be that person that says that.
Isn't that what happened with the Ghostbusters? His dad did the first whatever, and now the son is doing.
that's the newer one that I think they're going to produce.
Yeah, the newer one that's coming out, because the last one that came out was like by Paul Feig, who's a guy who was like did all these other movies, and he was responsible for Freaks and Geeks.
Oh, okay. The so I guess it was like the original.
But they're like, because they did like a new version of it. Like, it was all female cast like a few years back. But there's supposed to be a new one that's kind of like a sequel to the original ones back in the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
And that one is
The dad and the son.
That two directors or whatever is the production, but it's supposed to be more related to that first film, almost ignoring the new one that just came out.
Oh, okay.
But there's also a thing of like, they didn't want the new one because, whatever, the casting and stuff, but it's supposed to be unrelated to that one too, and people don't, they just want a sequel to the original ones, but don't want, don't want to see a new version of it either way.
That's the other pet peeve. Remember when they did that with the Incredible Hulk? It's like 1 year they came out with the Incredible Hulk, and then another year they came out with the Incredible Hulk. You're like, what? They just did it.
Yeah.
I have like that. I can't stand remakes. I can't stand like stuff like that. I mean, like, the thing is, one of my favorite movies is actually a remake. It's The Fly by David Cronenberg. That was an old movie from like the 50s. But I just think that it's like a different movie,
Yeah. And they're kind of ruining the first one in a sense.
What sounds you can make like if it's so far removed, like if it's the 50s to like one with the original.
Yeah, the
90s.
remake came out like late 80s or like in the 80s, and so it's like it was like a separation of generations,
Enough.
And and so it's like it was enough where you would be like, oh, I never heard of this movie, and then your dad would be like, oh, let's go see this. I remember seeing this back in the day, that kind of thing. But like that kind of thing doesn't bother me, but it's like it's so close together. Yeah. It's like, I mean, I did like the Halloween it's not. It doesn't even serve as a remake. It's supposed to be a sequel to the first one.
Yeah.
Which completely excuses all the other 3 ones, and you're just like, what? And then they're making a sequel for that one. You're like, what's happening to Halloween 2, 3, 4, and 5?
That's the thing. It's like now, Hollywood, the AAA movies, whatever you call them, like it's so dependent on just name recognition.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the only way they really put any really money into those types of things. Because, independent films is like those. That's where you go to the film festivals to find that type of stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like that. Like there was he's a terrible, terrible man. But there's a guy. His name is James Toback. He's a filmmaker from New York. What he would do is he has a really cool documentary actually where like he talks about making his next movie, and so he meets with like investors, and it's exactly what you were saying. Like all these investors are like, "Are you gonna get Nev Campbell in the movie?" He's like, "This movie is not for Nev Campbell," and he's like, "Well, I'll give you $5 million if you get Nev Campbell for the movie. I've always wanted to see her in a movie." And then he was like, what? And that's how it works. It's like these people like bid on like, I'll give you this much money if you can cast this person.
But it seems like even nowadays the starring person doesn't even matter that much anymore, because like now it's like only blockbuster movies, really, like superhero movies or whatever it is, really make the money. Yeah, it doesn't matter who's attached to like even the regular dramatic films. It's like those aren't making like hundreds of millions of dollars, because so they kind of get thrown to the wayside.
Oh my god, yeah, and it's mostly just about like the brand name now. Like it's like Spider-Man. Who cares playing Spider-Man? It's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna make almost $1 billion.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, but in the same way though, casting is obviously very important, because they could also almost ruin the movie.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. You got to be sure that you're not going to have. I mean, I would love to see the Nicolas Cage version of Superman, but you're not going to have like people casting Nicolas Cage as Superman,
right?
Because that's just ridiculous. But I would love to see that.
Right.
I would pay money to see that.
Yeah. But there's like like if I have a 5-year-old son, and there's a lot of Disney stuff that's watched, and it's just this wild. I can't even watch it because it's this overacting with these kids shows. Yeah. It's like so over the top. It's not believable, and my kid is cracking up laughing, and I'm like, and it drives me crazy. I'm like, I gotta walk out of here because this is not funny to me. And he's loving every second of it.
But it seems like any of those like TV shows with like Power Rangers stuff we grew up
with.
Yeah, it was so bad.
They were great when we were 10 years old, and they're terrible now. But even you watch it now, even they're still terrible.
Yeah, but they were so great when you were a kid. They're so nostalgic. Like Goosebumps. You ever seen Goosebumps now? It looks so bad. But it's just like really funny because actually, like you said with your kid, it's like I have a nephew. My nephew is 1 year old, and my sister's always putting on like YouTube videos, and he's watching these videos, and it's like the Incredible Hulk doing jumping jacks and like singing the wheels on the bus, and it's like a bus filled with different superheroes, and you're like, what is this? This isn't even a real thing anymore. Like they don't have shows anymore. They just watch these videos of just people singing on buses, and you're like, this is like an acid trip.
Yeah. It's real trippy.
Because back in the day too, like TV was like appointment TV. You had to watch it at a certain point. Now they just have to fill time for anything. And so now you have random superheroes jumping on the bus.
Yeah, it's
just because they can do it.
They can do it, and people are just like, it's so easy to do. People, and because they're so poorly made, some of them, that you're just like, what? And they get like millions and millions of views. There's a weird business going on there.
It is. So, do you think? I know you said you have like different topics that you hit. You don't want to just corner yourself to one topic. But in acting, I don't know if this is true for filmmaking. In acting, it's almost like you watch an actor make themselves like really a household name, like an Al Pacino, right? He comes out with all these he's in all these gangster movies, and that's how you want to see him now. Is that also the case with like producers? It's like they came out, it's like, I can't see Al Pacino playing, I don't know, White Man Can't Jump. You know what I mean? It's like, this doesn't make sense.
That's the problem with like that world where you kind of like pigeonhole or you typecast. Yeah. I don't like typecasting. I don't want to be like I don't want to be like a genre filmmeker. Like I don't want people to look at me and go, "Oh, that's the horror filmmaker. Oh, that's the guy." I don't want that. I don't want to be typecasted.
Yeah.
I mean that's because the problem is like if you try something new and you're typecasted, you're just nobody's gonna trust you. Nobody's gonna want to see what you're in, and what you're gonna be in is gonna be a joke. So it's really good to see actors that actually like to change the type of person they play so you don't confuse them.
Right.
The other thing that's weird to me that I still have to get out of is I cannot. So like, let's say you watch a movie and it stars like Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman, right?
Yeah.
And then you watch another movie and it stars Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman, but they're completely different people.
Yes.
And like
I agree.
You're just like, this throws me off. Like I understand that this filmmaker likes working with these actors, but like I don't want to this is Tom Cruise the butcher and Tom Cruise the mechanic. I knew I liked Tom Cruise when he was a butcher. Now he's a mechanic. Why? What?
Right.
So I mean, I can see why people get typecasted, or why actor. It's like an easy paycheck for people because you're a specific type of brand.
Yeah.
But. I don't see myself working with same actors like in movies that I do in the future. Like I'm going to develop friendships and relationships with these people, but I don't see myself working with the same people every movie because it's just going to be weird for me to get out of seeing them. You spend almost a year talking to this person about this character and directing these people as this person. And so it's like, it's hard to, I mean, it's unprofessional of me, I guess, but it's hard to do that. I can't just. I developed this personal relationship with this person as this specific thing, And again, they're human, they're people. This is their job, but like when you're making a movie, the actor is that character, and you see them as that character.
Yeah.
And although you can separate the actor from the character, I can't see that actor doing another thing for me.
Yeah.
I'd have to be wowed about how different. I'd have to have an actor that can completely change themselves, and you don't even recognize who they are from one movie to another.
Yeah.
In order for me to work, like.
Yeah, I mean it's. I mean, I think about you see, specific characters that they play. Same thing, like comedians who then become actors, like a Kevin Hart, and. It's like I need to see him being a funny character, and he's in this Jumanji, and he's a really silly character, or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden he's talking about he's coming out with a more serious, and it's kind of like hard to kind of see that, but it's like wait, he doesn't always have to be funny, right? I mean,
there was one movie came out recently that was him. I forget what.
And Bryan Cranston. That was like more dramatic.
Yeah.
And initially, when the first promotion for that first came out, it seemed more dramatic, but then like later on, when it came closer to release, it became more almost
like a
comedic,
comedy,
like a buddy movie.
Yeah. That's exactly how they promoted it, like a buddy comedy, because people were like, "What, Kevin Hart?" But I mean, like those are the people. Comedians are the people you have to trust that be able to get so dark.
Yeah.
Because they're funny, but they're funny because they're dark people, know? And so it's like you got to imagine that their lives are not like all as funny as their jokes, and so they know how to play a dramatic character.
And that's the thing too, like even with like case of Jordan Peele was like he did so well with Get Out was the first
that
horror movie. It was like, and he did like comedy skits for years, but it's like they say like they're the kind of the best ones who can kind of transition to a lot of different things.
Oh my god, yeah.
Just because they do comedy and make it seem realistic.
Yeah.
Or make it seem like at least relatable, whatever it is. And they can kind of transition that to different genres because it takes that same idea and translates it to whether it be horror or something like that, so it can make it more relatable to that situations. That makes sense.
No, it does make sense.
And so they're incredible at it.
Yeah.
Like I have a comedian that plays the role of Jeff, who's the cannibal in the movie.
Okay.
And he's a comedian, and I just know that he can take this character into a really dark place.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I trust him. You know?
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Yeah, it's like I also like to work with people that are like not very true. This is probably going to change as I get into it more, but like non-traditional actors.
Okay.
You know, people that are just getting into it, or people that have an interest in it, because it's just a matter of like, you know, it's an interesting way to like work with people in that way, because you can talk to them, and I guess it's also, I think it's also might be like it's just a way of like trying to talk to these people as if you're talking about another person and not necessarily a character, and then eventually they become that person.
Yeah.
For the role.
I don't know who it was. It might have been this this whole Ghostbuster thing. I don't even know what I was. I think I was listening to a Bill Burr podcast or something. He was talking about working with actors, and some actors know exactly where to be in a shot, and others have no idea they're in the way of like the lighting.
Yeah.
You know? He's like,
Yeah,
there's this weird complexity. He's like, you're making my job harder now.
Yeah,
you know?
It's really funny. There's a similar action like that in my career where, you know, I work in news, so I'm I'm promoting a lot of stuff, and a lot of the times you'll have a crew or an anchor that you're working with for a promo, and they'll be like, oh, actually, you want to put the light right here or right under me. I look best in this light, and they know exactly where to stand and where they're going to be. And I'm like, what? And I can imagine that just being like, how the hell do they know already?
Just intuition.
Yeah. You've just been working in the industry for that long. Like, hey, dude, move. The camera's pointing here. Or you're supposed to be right here next to me. Yeah.
Right. Do you think, though, like to parlay on that, like, do you think a lot of actors then become or want to be directors? What is the thing with that?
I think actors, they have an interesting way of I think an actor directing is a little more traditional, in the sense of what directing is now, because like, I mean, a lot of times, you know, directing, you can be directing the camera, you can be directing the actor, you can be directing the actor and the camera, and you write your scripts, and that's what makes you the auteur, is that you're just incredible at all these things.
Yeah.
And you know, the interesting thing is, I think actors, like, they kind of get it, you know, they get the kind of direction, the way that they talk to actors, or the way that directors should talk to actors. Yeah. And so there's just something about that. And, you know, they build relationships with their DPs, and, you know, they have visions and creative visions as well. Yeah. And so, like, they may depend on the DP and may just direct actors, or maybe they are just great visually. But yeah, I think a lot of actors want to get into directing, because it's just, it's like the higher step from acting. It's being able to have this experience in this job and talk to other actors the way that you would like to be talked to as an actor, the way you want to be directed. And so that's why it's cool like that.
That is cool. So explain to us how you were a Emmy-nominated producer. How'd that all come about?
Oh boy.
It's very fascinating.
I was working for a news station in Trenton called Chasing News, and I worked on this show, and they were doing a special, and I figured, they were like, oh, we're gonna get this special together, we need a crew, and so they had me on board, and I was working for them as like an editor producer. Okay. And then they had me work on this like shoot. It was for a special about heroin, heroin in Philadelphia, and so I was camera person for them, and I helped produce it, I guess. I did a lot of different stuff for them. And it's like, it's hard to figure out what your job is exactly when you have to work in an industry that people just kind of throw you in 50 different jobs. You know? And so it's like, so they got me on board with this, and then all of a sudden one day they're like, oh, we submitted this for the Emmys. And I'm like, okay. I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, oh God, whatever.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean anything. It's just a submission, and it's expensive, and you're just like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden they come back to us one day and like, oh, we were nominated, and I was like, what?
Wow.
It was like it was the Northeast. Not Emmys or whatever. It's the one that's like that they do the event around here in Pennsylvania.
More regional.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the regional awards,
cool.
but it was interesting because like there's the Emmys and then there's like it's the same thing. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to tear it down, but it's like if you get that award, it's like you're gonna it's like you're slowly making your way up in your job because it doesn't matter if you go home and you go, you know what, it's not the televised Emmys, but it's the same company that's giving you this nomination. So
no matter what, you're still Emmy nominated.
Yeah, exactly.
Heck yeah.
At the end of the day, and so that's how it happened.
So what's in closing, what's your recommendation to anyone trying to jump into the movie or filmmaking industry, whether it's a young kid, a younger you? What would you say to yourself now with your experience?
Don't do it. That's everybody's joke. It's such a cliche joke that I always make.
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem is that film schools, I respect a lot of people that work for film schools. It's a job for a lot of people that are filmmakers that work in as professors. Like one of my favorite filmmakers, Todd Solondz, is the professor at NYU. But I think they try their best, but I don't think that there's enough that they do, because it's a lot of like, you come here and like we'll turn you into something.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that mentality.
Yeah.
And then, it's like, I feel like NYU had, like, for a school like NYU, it's like once you're in because of the name,
Right.
But I didn't do NYU because I didn't want to be surrounded by those people. I'm sure they're great, but I didn't want to be surrounded by all those egos.
Yeah.
And like a lot of mentality is like, it's not honest. I think there's something about, I liked film school. I went to school of Visual Arts, and I really appreciated the program. But I think that like the thing that you should really take away is, one, you shouldn't focus on just one thing.
Right.
A lot of people came into film school wanting to be a director, and you're like, what is that? Like, how can you do that?
Yeah.
And like no other aspirations.
Yeah.
Because I think at the end of the day, it's like, why you have to really sit back and say, do you want to be a director because you want to create stuff? Like, do you care that if you're working a full-time job and making a movie at the same time, like that could be the rest of your life. Do you really want to do that?
Right.
And if you really want to do it, then you should go for it. But you should also focus on something that is career worthy, like that can get you a career,
Yeah.
Like there's so many jobs in the industry. There's so much money in the industry. And like people are so focused on like directing, and I'm like, no, like go be a PA, man. Go clean up garbage.
Yeah,
that's the first thing they tell you. But go try editing, try working in a post facility, be an AC, assistant cameraman.
Okay.
Work in the industry, meet people, and don't focus on directing. Just do multiple jobs.
Yeah.
And but also like if you really want to be a director, like if you want to work a full-time job, or if you're want to be directing to like make it famous, be famous.
Yeah.
I mean, do it, whatever, do your thing. I don't care. But I would say like you got to be career focused. Like you have to have something else, like whether it's like working in a bank, working in an office,
right?
Like you have to commit to a full-time job, because this is not going to be your full-time job from the beginning.
Yeah. Love it.
Unless you have money.
Yeah. And that's another story. All right, cool. So we're going to wrap up with a quote from John Lewis. We must bring the issue of mental illness out into the sunlight, out of the shadow, out of the closet, deal with it, treat people, have centers where people can get the necessary help. And I know part of the unlikely story you had a little tagline at the bottom, which I want to incorporate here. If you are in a crisis, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That is 8255. Or contact the crisis text line by texting TALK to 741741. An unlikely story. In this episode, we have special guest and Emmy-nominated producer Ricardo Lorenzo. We cover topics that range from mental illness, filmmaking, crowdfunding, creative processes, and much more. We wrap the episode up with a quote from John Lewis and a message from the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Awesome. Guys, thanks again for joining us. The Rotated Views podcast was produced for self-development purposes. Huge shout out to our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Blessed Lifestyle brand. That is BL3SSED.com. Also sponsored by The Motivation Files Unleashed. This motivational mixtape will be your fuel for success. Available on all platforms. Guys, don't forget to visit the website, JimmyleeVelez.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rotated Views. If you have any inquiries or questions, email us at info@JimmyleeVelez.com. On behalf of myself and the rest of the crew, we wish you massive success. Stay blessed.